Thank you very much for staying on. Now to our very first story. The Chief Executive of Cocoa Board, Stephen Opuni Frimpong, has been asked to vacate his post as head of the institution. In a directive signed by the Secretary to the President, Nana Asante Bedietu, Mr. Opuni Frimpong is expected to hand over his office to a representative of the President at the Ministry of Agriculture by 5 p.m. on Friday, January 13. According to the directive, in pursuant to Section 14 of the Presidential Transition Act, Mr. Opuni ceased to hold his office as CEO upon assumption of office of the President. Now, what does this development mean to the industry, which has in recent times struggled to meet its annual output target? Okay, so we will be talking to the General Secretary of the General Agricultural Workers Union, GAU, when we reach him to explore the impact of this particular situation on the cocoa industry. All right, so moving on Business Live, former Deputy Minister of Finance Mona Quartey is rejecting reports the previous administration submitted inaccurate data to the IMF during their engagements, following the previous administration's not so encouraging end-of-year macroeconomic results. Some analysts have questioned the relevance of the IMF program. Renowned economist Dr. Joe Abe has, however, defended the fund, saying the economy is going through this challenge just because the NDC government did not present accurate data to the IMF. But Mrs. Quartey disagrees.
Honorable Seth, Honorable Atu, and myself are professional people, and there is no way we will withhold information or data to the IMF before the program. Surely the President invited them to come for the program. We were aware of it, and they came, and we completely worked with them and gave them the data that we had to give them. Perhaps there were conversation about the way of calculating certain things, and everyone has their way of doing things. There's no one way of calculating certain numbers, so we may have had those conversations. But if you recall, the targets that the IMF set even at the beginning in terms of performance or structural benchmarks, they changed them again and made them even tighter. If you recall, the deficit for this year was supposed to be 5.5. They moved it to 5.3 and eventually to 5 because we had overperformed in the first two reviews. Our own success was coming back to haunt us. So in terms of data, we gave them the correct data as we had them, and we did not intentionally or even attempt to give them any data that was not right. We gave them the right data.
Now, give real meaning to your plan to protect the public purse and root out corruption. That is the expectation of the country's development partners from this administration. William Hanna is head of EU delegation to Ghana.
I think expectations in Ghana are high. I mean, having heard the speeches, very clear, they're high, and we see a number of things that the government is talking about which are of interest to us. I mean, the first would be indeed the emphasis on the private sector, on investment, and on jobs. The President-elect said to us when he met us, he said, "Look, I'm not looking for your European taxpayers' money. I'm looking for your businesses to come and invest in this country and help us create jobs." And I think we welcome that approach, because I think I've said this to you before. We see Ghana, middle-income country, as a country which doesn't need or should not need in the future development assistance, but which needs to be more integrated in the region, in the world economy, investment, jobs, private sector. And you know that our businesses are interested, our countries are sending down missions often to invest here. So we see that as a very important signal. Ghana is open for business, and that's certainly for us very, very encouraging. So that will be the first thing that's, and we will already start talking to the government about its plans to improve the business environment and the environment for business. That's crucial. I think also what the President has said, what the government has said about protecting the public purse. That, I think, for us is also key. You know that in the past we were concerned about public financial management. It's important that finances coming from the taxpayers of Ghana should be protected. And you know that in the past we had concerns about the macroeconomic environment, about management of the public finances, about the ghost workers, the payroll, all those issues from a year ago. We were pleased when there was an agreement with the IMF and these issues were addressed. More needs to be done in the future. And so that emphasis on protecting the public purse and on fighting corruption, indeed, for us is welcome.
The Ghana Investment Promotion Center, GIPC, has rejected suggestions that it focuses on attracting foreign investment into the country at the expense of domestic companies. Ghanaian business operators have in recent times called for a level playing field between them and foreign investors in the establishment of businesses in the country. They lament the lack of policies for growing indigenous businesses as opposed to foreign ones which enjoy tax incentives, among others, in the name of investment attraction. But the CEO of the GIPC, Maruna Treba, says domestic businesses are first on their list when it comes to investment opportunities.
Reality is that you also need to look at the sector-specific investments. Now, clearly, big infrastructure investments, roads, ports, airport facilities require other resources, other expertise, new technologies that we simply don't have in the country. So, of course, we would invite potential investors to come into the country. Now, having said that, they also need to be the kinds of investors who understand what we expect out of those investments that are being pursued. So we don't just hand over a whole lot of incentives unless we can prove that if we offer those incentives to the company in question, significantly more will accrue back to the country in the number of jobs that are created and the technology that's created. But I think what is exciting for us as an investment promotion center is to see the level of change and interest in registering with the Ghana Investment Promotion Center by the domestic business community, because that was the biggest perception to deal with, that, oh, the Investment Promotion Center is only interested in foreign direct investment. No. We actually need to start with the domestic business community. And I think giving them the attention and the focus that, quite frankly, they deserve and have always deserved.
All right, so the CEO of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, Maruna Treba, was speaking with Inshira Ado on the Executive Lounge, which airs on Saturdays at 5 p.m. on the Joy News channel and on Multi TV. We're still on Business Live. Let's take a quick breather here. We'll be back. Let's now get back to the Ashanti Regional Capital, where the local authority, the KMA, is cashing in on parking spaces and raising its revenue.
Agency, Gold Street Real Estate Company, which made 1.8 million Ghana cedis last year, is targeting 2 million Ghana cedis for 2016. Meanwhile, an average of between 600 million and 700 million Ghana cedis was collected from 2006 to 2013. The figure rose to 1.76 million Ghana cedis in 2014. The money ends up in the respective coffers of KMA and the Urban Roads Department. All these vehicles parked here are paying 1 Ghana cedis irrespective of the time spent, whether 1 minute or 1 hour. 10 years on after the introduction of the on-street pay parking policy, two questions pertain: whether the congestion challenge in the city center has been curtailed, or whether users are getting value for money.
The situation here is very bad because sometimes I come here, I have to go round and round 7 times before I get a small place to park. The inconvenience is too much. So if they can do something about it, I think it will help all of us. This is a doom, and we think getting a place somewhere for all of us, for everybody to go there, will be a good idea.
No, the service is not okay, but they are taking 1 city from us. We don't want that. It's not good because they are not helping us. You see, that's why I'm saying that.
First why you say, what chere ha? We could see baby and Kebehow, from Forbehow, and all this.
Motorists and other residents have to contend with unbearable traffic with little space to maneuver as vehicles are parked along major streets. Kakraba Ampe is chief executive of the collection agency.
We've been discussing with the KMA that there's the need to take some of the wholesale trading activities out of the city center because in various jurisdictions, as conditions change, wholesale businesses are taken to the urban periphery so that offices and walk-in shopping activities are preserved for the city center, and that is where we should be looking at. The other factor that we have been discussing, which we hope over time could also be introduced, is the possibility of getting high-rise parking facility in Kumasi. Accra has a couple of those facilities, and it helps because that way you can stack a number of vehicles within the same space and therefore free the on-street parking locations for people who are coming for 1 hour, 2 hours and to do business. So freedom to move about, in your vehicle or as a pedestrian is not as it used to be some few years ago, just because of the sheer numbers, which also means that we need to revise our notes and rethink the processes to see how we can improve.
There are also concerns about what the money has been used for since 2006 when the pay parking was introduced. Public Relations Officer for the Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly, Godwin Okumanyame, provides some answers.
And whatever amount that the KMA collects, it becomes a public money, it becomes a public fund. So if you look at the KMA in general, just as any other public fund is being used, that's what we also use it for. Even the receipt that we issue are from Control and Accountant General Department, what we call the JCR, General Counterfeit Receipt. So once you issue it and the people pay for, it becomes a public fund. And like any other public fund, that's what we use. We use it for development, we use it for even people, we even use part of the money to pay people to make sure that they clean the city. We use some to make sure that we fuel the vehicles, we make sure that we use some to also service our equipment and so on and so forth. So basically, whatever amount that we collect becomes a public fund and then it's being used just as any other public fund is being supposed to be used.
Plans for constructing a modern car park in the Central Business District is yet to materialize 10 years on. But Mr. Kumanyame hints the KMA is exploring public-private partnership for the project.
And the area located for it happens to be the prison, around the prison, where we have the lorry park. And like I said earlier, we have a whole lot of people who have expressed, companies that actually express interest. The current one happens to be some Chinese. It's only the company that I cannot actually recall. Some Chinese also came last year to express interest. I mean, to actually develop that place as an ultra-modern car park.
Prince Apia reporting.
Still on Business Live, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll take a look at how our performance or how our stocks are performing today or this week on the stock markets. Thanks for staying and welcome back. Now, research analyst Bertha Atubiga has just joined us on phone to give us an update on the stock markets and how the various stocks, the commodities, as well as the currencies have been faring for the week. Good evening and welcome to Business Live, Bertha. Hello, Bertha.
Yeah, hello, Emmanuel.
All right.
I can hear you.
Very well. Now, so what has been the performance of the stock markets, especially the equities, the financial equities?
Well, this year, first week and then this week has been very productive for the financial equities, and volumes of shares have been traded. ETI yesterday resulted, as a result of the trading ETI yesterday on the stock market, we saw the major indices move upwards because ETI has a major, like a high market cap or worth on the Ghana Stock Exchange. But so far the year has actually begun on a very good note. We've seen very huge volumes of shares traded on the market, and today was no exception. We had UT Bank trading the highest volumes of shares today, over 8 million. We had 8,436,300 shares trading in UT Bank. And if you look at the trade from the market, that's on the brokerage side, realize that there are still more outstanding orders. That's on the buyer's side. We have only 250 shares on the sell side. And for the 250 shares, it's going for about 4 pesos, which will result in a peso gain for UT Bank. But the buyers are ready to buy at 2 pesos, which is lower than the current market price of 3 pesos. So the buyers, which are a lot, are ready to buy at 3 pesos for UT Bank, and the seller, that's just one, is ready to offload at 4 pesos per share.
All right, Bertha, before you go on, earlier in the week, UT Bank sales was halted by the Ghana Stock Exchange, and then the halt was lifted. Now, what accounts or what is accounting for the spontaneous interest in UT Bank equities?
Okay, thank you very much. You know, after the halt, before the halt, and then after the halt was on the 3rd of January, and then the halt was taken off on the 9th of January. After these periods, we were still seeing consistent, like very huge volumes of shares trading in UT Bank. Now, one thing is that the equity is very low, 3 pesos. There are two sides of the story. Usually we have a buyer and we have the seller. Now, the buyer is ready to buy at a lower price, expecting that I'll buy at 3 pesos or 2 pesos, and then if it gains a peso or 2, I sell off and make my gain.
Okay.
So if you buy huge volumes of shares and then it goes up by a peso or 2, you make some capital gains on your investment, then you can easily sell off. And then the seller is also selling off because they have already made lots of losses. The equity lost 70% last year, started at 10 pesos and it closed at 3 pesos, and it's still trading at. Okay, so today it lost a peso, it closed at 3 pesos on the stock market after trading the highest volumes of shares. So UT Bank has gone down to 2 pesos per share. So investors actually, the buyers are ready to buy at a lower price to make some marginal gains and then capital gains and sell off. And the sellers, those who invested at the beginning of last year or previous years, have already lost so much and they don't want to lose further. So they will sell off to actually avoid further losses. That's what's happening with
and do we expect this trend to continue to the following week?
Yes, we should expect more trades go on in UT Bank because from the trade that ended today, we still had about, let's say, about over 300,000 shares outstanding that people are ready to buy, and we had only 250 ready to sell.
All right.
And
so
that's what we saw.
Yeah, so you tell us about the other equities as well.
Okay, so today we had other equities trading. We had Cal Bank, we had EcoBank, we had ETI, GCE, HFD, Societe Generale, Total, and UT Bank. Now, out of this, we had the second equity that traded the highest volumes of shares, ETI. Over 800,000 shares were traded in ETI today, and the share price for ETI is still at 12 pesos per share. It has actually gone up by a peso. Previously, it was 11 pesos. That's for the week. And then Cal is still trading at 76 pesos after trading about 500 shares on the market. And then we have EcoBank going. EcoBank closed at 6 cities, 85 pesos. We had GCB closing at 3 cities, 66 pesos. HFC closed at 75 pesos per share. We had Societe Generale closing at 66 pesos, and Total closed at 2 cedis 4 pesos per share. So the only mover that we had today on the market was UT Bank.
Okay.
So the previous share price of 3 pesos, it closed at 2 pesos per share. And the total volumes of shares closed at 9,620,300.
Okay.
That was the total volumes of shares that were traded. And UT Bank actually took more than 90% of the total volumes that were traded today on the market.
Wow, that's quite significant. Now, what do you have to tell us by way of the currencies markets?
Well, the CD last year did very well, and this year we've seen some marginal depreciation. Sometimes it loses and then it gains. But we're expecting that stability that we saw last year to continue. Toward the latter part of the year, we saw much volatility, seeing the dollar go to about 4 cedis, 10 pesos. And I think about yesterday it was closing around 4 cedis, 20 pesos to $1. And that is still high. We're expecting that with a change in government, everything should change, but not at the goal. But some gradual change will happen. So we should expect the city to be stabilized. And you know very well that the government will also work very hard to let the value of the city come up. That's reducing the number of the value of cities that you need for $1. So that's something that I know they will be trying to work at to reduce the year-to-date depreciation of the city against major trading partners on the interbank market.
All right, quickly, do you also have something about the commodities, the international commodities?
For commodities, I know crude oil has also gone up to about $50 per barrel, but that is also subjected to much volatility on the world market. Okay. And we are not expecting that to come down anytime soon. So that's what is happening. We are not seeing much. Yesterday, almost all commodities appreciated, with the exception of cocoa, which dropped about $24.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, Bertha Atubiga.
You're welcome.
Bertha Atubiga is our stock market analyst, bringing us up to speed with developments on the stock market this week. It's now time for the interview of the day, and the previous administration is justifying its record, saying the situation could have been better if it had not been for challenges with revenue mobilization. The previous administration has come under serious criticisms after it missed out on most of its 2016 macroeconomic targets. This resulted in spending far more than budgeted, with fiscal deficits reaching 8%, debt to GDP ratio hitting 72%, whilst inflation ending at 15.4%. But former Deputy Finance Minister Mona Korte says these targets should be seen as just numbers.
Targets are just to guide you. You don't necessarily have to bend over backwards and kill yourself to achieve those targets. You do your best to achieve them, and they motivate you towards them. So the most important thing is that we've gravitated towards that target. And therefore, moving from 19 plus to 15, it's a great achievement. And I think that all Ghanaians should be proud of the fact that we've all made sacrifices in order to tame inflation.
I look at the numbers, and for the normal layperson, he or she wants to look at the hard numbers and still raise questions about whether indeed we have really ended on a good note. Because if you see a deficit slightly over 8%, you see a debt to GDP ratio of 72, everything that anybody would say is that this government overspent, and spent like overspent.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And anyone who checks on our numbers on our website, and soon the numbers will come out because they are provisional numbers, but they will come out as the outturns. One will see clearly that this government did not overspend. As I said, our target under the IMF program, our target for expenditure, we did not exceed it. It is our target for revenue that we did not meet. So in terms of spending, that was under control. However, there were certain areas that we overspent. I mean, for example, goods and services for the MDAs. If you recall, the year before, there had been a lot of cry that we had cut the expenditure budget to the bone. So this time we allowed a little so that they could progress, because government business must still continue. We don't have to go into such austere measures that government business will stop, or such austere measures that social protection will suffer.
And that will be a wrap for this evening's edition of Business Live. Many thanks for joining me once again, and keep watching Joy News. We'll bring you some more business updates in our subsequent bulletin on Joy News Prime, and meanwhile, enjoy the great weekend.